Hi, I'm going to talk on health and ultra-processed foods. How do they correlate? Are they beneficial to our health? Or are they more detrimental? I'm Meghann Talkington. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian working with PremierU, certified in obesity and weight management, and I'm also a certified wellness practitioner. And this is sponsored by PremierU, offices in Swansea, South County, and Marion. So let's start with understanding ultra-processed foods. What are they? By definition, ultra-processed foods contain little whole foods and are made from artificial substances and food additives. The Environmental Working Group defines them as food products that contain one or more of certain functional ingredients, including artificial colors and flavors, non-sugar sweeteners, emulsifiers, and thickening agents. These ingredients are mostly produced by industry processes and are broken down and combined to form ultra-processed foods. These products are commonly then molded into shapes or extruded through a machine to form the final processed food form. There are common examples of ultra-processed foods would be sugary breakfast cereals, packaged snacks and cookies, pop, frozen pizza, instant noodles. These are very common typical processed foods. These foods prioritize convenience and shelf life, but they often lack nutritional value, which raises health concerns. Let's talk about the nutritional and chemical concerns around ultra-processed foods. First of all, their lack of essential nutrients. Ultra-processed foods like fiber, vitamins, minerals, and lean protein, which are all critical for maintaining good health. Regular consumption of these foods, because they are nutrient poor, leads to weight gain, insulin resistance, elevated blood pressure, high cholesterol and triglyceride levels, and other cardiovascular and metabolic problems. Some studies even show that there is a link between ultra-processed foods and cancer and mental health. A diet rich in whole foods, including fiber and lean protein, supports energy, body functions, and disease prevention. So let's talk about statistically how important this lack of essential nutrition is when you're over-consuming ultra-processed foods. There was an article released in JAMA. This was focusing on youth aged 2 through 19 between the years of 1999 and 2018. But in this research, they found that the estimated percentage of total energy from consumption of ultra-processed foods alone significantly increased from 61.4% to 67%, where the percentage of total energy consumption from unprocessed or minimally processed foods decreased between 28.8% and 23.5%. So this is showing historically over this time period that the ultra-processed food intake has increased and whole foods have decreased. Whole or ultra-processed foods altogether primarily coming from like ready-to-eat and mixed dishes significantly increased from 2.2% all the way up to 11.1%, and then significantly increased for sweet snacks and other kind of baked goods between 10.6% and 12.9%. At a food level, the ultra-processed foods consumed by U.S. youth just between 2017 and 2018 alone contain a statistically significantly higher estimated percentage of calories from carbohydrates compared with foods not ultra-processed, which mainly includes added sugars, and the level of fiber decreased, and the percentage of the calories from protein also decreased. So ultra-processed foods contain statistically significantly higher levels of sodium, iron, vitamin E, and folic acid, but lower levels of other vitamins and minerals than foods that are not ultra-processed. At the population level, youths are at a higher quintile percentage of energy from ultra-processed foods. This is consumed statistically higher for carbohydrates, total fat, polyunsaturated fats, in added sugars, but lower in our essential nutrients like protein, fiber, calcium, magnesium, potassium, zinc, and our vitamins. So food additives and chemicals. Common food additives, these are processed foods that contain things like artificial flavors, colors, preservatives, emulsifiers. They're supposed to improve taste and shelf life. Food chemicals to look out for can include things like titanium dioxide. Most of your colored dyes with the associated number are on this list. Things like BHA, decarbonamide, potassium bromide, BVO, and propylparabens are all ingredients that you can find in a label for ultra-processed foods. If you see those foods on there, or ingredients on the food list, really try to avoid that food item. Or if you don't know what the ingredient is or you can't pronounce it, also a good sign to avoid the food item. Certain additives may disrupt our gut microbiome. They cause inflammation. They can affect our GI health. Additional impacts include genotoxicity, so they affect the way our genes are being used and carrying over. Neurotoxicities, it affects brain development in kids. It can cause behavior difficulties, hormone disruption, and increased risk of cancer. It is very important to understand the ingredients in your food. This helps us make better choices when we are shopping and helping us to reduce that risk to the additive exposure. So what are the implications on health? The long-term health consequences can include a risk of chronic diseases. These can be things like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and certain cancers over time. It affects mental health. The intake of high processed food directly correlates with depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline, which affects our mental well-being. It can lead to inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. So things like sugar, unhealthy fats, which are primarily your trans fats and your saturated fats, and sodium cause inflammation and metabolic problems leading to chronic illness. So by reducing ultra-processed food intake, it is essential for preventing diseases and promoting long-term health. What is the impact on our metabolism? Cause blood sugar fluctuations. So processed foods cause rapid blood sugar spikes and crashes, leading to insulin resistance and metabolic issues. It can increase our level of hunger, and lead to overeating. So low fiber and protein in processed foods causes quicker digestion, which increases our hunger, and it puts us just a higher risk to overeat. Hormonal imbalances can be in effect. These can be things from appetite regulation and energy metabolism. So it's doing this in a negative way when we're eating ultra-processed foods. It is significantly more beneficial to eat whole foods, which offer balanced nutrients. They stabilize blood sugar, they help regulate appetite, and they support a healthy metabolism over time. So one thing, for an example, that these ultra-processed foods do, when we're talking about, let's use something sweet, for example, where it contains a lot of artificial sweeteners. So things like saccharin, aspartame, sucralose, sulfamine potassium, sugar alcohols like erythritol, sorbitol, mannitol. A lot of those words that end in "all" are sugar alcohols, okay? And just to be mindful that sugar alcohols will be listed in the label, not also in the ingredient list, but also in the label. So underneath the carbohydrates, it usually says something about sugar alcohols. That has to be in your label if there's a sugar alcohol. Artificial sweeteners are only in your ingredient list. But those sweeteners in larger consumptions, some of those sweeteners are 100 times the sweetness of actual sugar. So it does nothing to actually decrease our craving for sweets. And potentially, if we're consuming more artificial sweets, we're craving more artificial sweets, we're eating more ultra-processed foods, and in turn, it's not helping our health at all, and it's just leading to overeating of foods that are unhealthy for us. So it's really important to be mindful of what those ingredients are and what we're actually consuming. So behavioral and environmental effects. Ultra-processed foods have a high carbon footprint due to the manufacturing and the packaging processes. They increase pollution and waste. So by us reducing the intake of ultra-processed foods, it also decreases the need to produce them, which will subsequently decrease these environmental factors. Social consequences. Processed foods are more accessible and affordable, which leads to dietary inequality and worsening health disparities, primarily in low-income communities. We really want to focus on sustainable food choices by supporting local agriculture and sustainable food options that can mitigate environmental and social impacts of these processed foods. So what are the solutions and conclusions? We need to really try to make healthier food choices. We want to choose whole foods, primarily foods that are not coming out of a package. So think about the way your food is on the ground. It should be the way your food is on the plate. Minimal amount of processing done. Cooking from home definitely helps with this. That way we can kind of control what's going in our food. We can balance it the way that we prefer, which helps sometimes with the flavor palette, also helps with the nutrition specifically. So we can make things healthier for making them from home. It's very hard to control what's in our food when we're getting it from out of the home. Making sure we're reading nutrition labels, okay, and understanding what they are. So we want to make sure those foods that are in the ingredient list, we know what they are, and we know if they are not going to be good for us to try to avoid. So smart grocery shopping. So taking the time to look at those labels, searching or shopping on the outskirts of the store where there's typically more like that's where your fresh produce is. That's where even your cooler sections are, getting things like frozen fruits and vegetables or frozen proteins, lean protein. That's what you want to focus on, is getting those things as fresh as possible, least amount of packaging. We need to rethink convenience. The health cost of processed foods is comparatively higher reactively than proactively. Think about spending more money potentially proactively on getting higher quality food items, but in the long run, you're saving money by not spending it on increased healthcare costs, which can start to mount up and lead to other chronic diseases that inevitably just have a trickle-down effect of increased cost. Meal prep benefits. If we're preparing meals ahead of time, using simple recipes, spreading ingredients out through multiple meals, it overall is going to save us money and also help with our health and making sure we're making healthier food choices. We tend to make less healthy food choices when we are rushed or meals aren't convenient because they're not pre-made or pre-planned and we're looking for anything to eat in the moment. We tend to make a less healthy food choice. So by embracing these whole foods, prioritizing them into our diet, it enhances our health and quality of life. That is the end of the presentation for today. The overall conclusion, everything is in moderation, but really try to be very mindful of anything that is coming from a package. Keeping those ingredients limited. Ideally, if you're looking at a food label or an ingredient list and there is more than 10 ingredients in there, likely probably needs to be avoided. So pay attention to your nutrition labels, read your ingredient list, know what the items are in there. If you don't know, likely avoid them and really try to choose foods that are that are more whole, plant-based versus something that's coming out of a box. Any questions? Please let us know. I hope everyone has a good day and stay well.